you so much for having me at your MD student conference. For many years, I wanted to be in your shoes. I grew up wanting to help people and had a keen interest in anatomy and biology. I pictured myself as a nurse or doctor. I certainly didn't fulfil my dream of helping people by becoming a doctor, and I often feel regret about that. But there are many ways to help people, and maybe through my experiences of being a lifetime patient, I am helping people by being the voice of many patients. Some of the questions I will ask you today will be confronting, but I ask you to trust me and to go there with me, as I really believe that the way you practice medicine can change the experience of a person who is at a most vulnerable and challenging time in their life. You hold the power to be a positive shining light for the patient in a system that will see them meeting 20 or 30 allied health professionals a day. Not all of these encounters will be pleasant, they won't all be helpful, but you have the chance to empower your patients and to be one of the helpful, positive experiences in their web of engagement with the hospital and medical staff. And you hold that power not just over the patient, but over their friends and families as well. I have found that I have to fight for access to health services, and that I need to be vigilant as a patient to maintain my dignity in a situation where dignity flies out the window before you're even diagnosed. I have to fight for healthcare and for quality healthcare. I have to fight for good treatment at a time in my life where I'm least able to fight. I thank you so much for this opportunity to show you the person behind the patient. My lifetime career of being a patient started back when I was 11. So let's go back to that time now. My brother, Sam, and I were born a year apart, so we grew up like twins. Wherever I was, he was. Wherever he went, I went. We shared a bike all through primary school. But in grade 6, we were given a fourth-hand old lady's racing bike. Didn't even have gears. But it had wheels and brakes, and it matched the hand-me-down POV brand BMX that we had sprayed multiple times over the years in an attempt to make it look newer, less shabby. November 2nd, 1989, at the end of my first year of high school. We headed off to school, Sam on the BMX that he had now grown out of, and me on the old lady's bike that I was yet to grow into. I rode standing up because my feet couldn't reach the pedals yet from the seat. I barely got to the end of the street before pain seared up my leg and I couldn't push the pedals. When I got off the bike, my heavy school bag tipped the bike over, adding to my sense of defeat. Sam rode on, and I limped back to the house and walked inside to ask for a lift. I use the term walk loosely, as it was more of a hop, skip, hobble, a skabobble, if you like. My injuries were something my family were well accustomed to. I was a hypochondriac of the highest order, and at any given moment boasted of at least 30 big bruises that were invisible to all but me. So it's not surprising that Dad told me to get back on my bike and head to school. He was on his way to an important meeting about the publication of his latest book. He wrote books for a living, and he did his work at home while we were at school or after we went to bed. So I wasn't used to him not being available to drive me to school. After he left in our beaten-up 1950s Rover, I was furious. This pain was real. I couldn't walk, much less ride. But I was a goody two-shoes and I had never missed a day of school, ever. So I devised a way to lean on the seat and push the bike along, propping myself up on it while I hopped the 2 kilometres to school. I missed first period and arrived halfway through the second period. Tired, red-faced, sweating, crying, and covered in egg. It was the Year 12 breakup day and they celebrated by egging us Year 7s. I collapsed in frustration outside the classroom where my very strict French teacher found me. I was terrified I would be in trouble for being late, but she knelt down beside me, put her arm around me and helped me to skabobble to the sick bay. Dad was called out of his meeting and he took me to the doctor to see what was wrong with this leg of mine. The doctor measured both my legs, asked a heap of questions, took an x-ray, gave me some crutches and asked to talk to my dad alone for a minute. As he came out of the doctor's room, Dad talked and walked a little bit like a zombie. He took me straight to the milk bar for some mixed lollies. And this time, not just 20 cents worth, $2 worth. I soon figured out that something was wrong. We tried to be normal in the car on the way to the Children's Hospital, and he didn't even steal any of my lollies from the huge stash. Well, hardly any. I was diagnosed later that day in the Royal Children's Hospital here in Melbourne with a rare bone cancer, and weeks of tests confirmed that it was a Ewing's sarcoma in my left fibula. For the next 2 years, the Royal Children's Hospital became my second home. Dad must have agonised watching me endure treatments that took me to the very brink of life itself, with the narrow hope that they could cure me. Our older sister, Hilda, tried to make me laugh and even bought me a copy each month of Dolly magazine, the teen mag that me and my friends were into at the time, but could never seem to save up for. Unable to do much else to make me feel better, she did what she could. When I came home to recover from chemo after each cycle, Sam would wipe my bald head with wet washers and brought a fresh bucket every time I was sick. I had 3 things on my side. My cancer was detected very early. It was in my fibula, which could be removed easily, surgically. And there had been several research developments over the previous decades that had resulted in a 1 in 3 survival rate for kids like me. 10 years earlier, no one survived. There was surgery and more than a year of chemotherapy. It was 1989 and there weren't many antiemetics available, and the team threw every trick in the book at me in a desperate bid to save my life. They told my dad that they would give me so much chemo that if the cancer didn't kill me, the treatment nearly would. And they informed him that if I did survive, I would be infertile as a result of my treatments. Dad held my hand, rubbed my back, and whispered encouraging words to me as I vomited multiple times every hour, losing strength each time, losing fight, and the will to live a little bit more with each chug. When I was about halfway through my treatment, I noticed that a lot of the newbie patients on the ward were a lot happier than me and my friends. They were laughing, chatting, playing games and watching TV. Why were they so normal while me and the other veterans suffered so dramatically? We lay there vomiting incessantly, so weak we couldn't even watch TV, much less play Mario Brothers on the ward Nintendo like my brother did. Whatever they were on, I wanted some, and I wanted it now. After many interrogations of newer patients and their parents, nurses and doctors, I discovered the missing link. They were on a trial for ondansetron. To be eligible, you had to be a new patient, which of course I wasn't. After begging and pleading with my medical team, I felt defeated. I would not be able to access this drug. Disheartened and feeling rather sorry for myself, I whinged and complained to Dad, to which he replied, "Well, if you really want it, you need to find a way to get it." With his guidance, I wrote a letter to the Health Minister at the time and the Prime Minister, Bob Hawke, presenting my case. The result was that I wasn't allowed onto the trial itself, but I would be granted access to the drug on compassionate grounds and with many waivers signed. The cogs of government and the health system moved as slowly then as they do now. And just in time for my final round of chemo, I finally had access to this miracle drug. I was still tired, I was still bald, I was still in pain, but this time I experienced chemo with an effective antiemetic on board. It was life-changing. No more vomiting every few minutes for a few days on end. No more vomiting every hour or two once I got home for weeks. I was able to sit up in bed. I was able to chat and watch TV even. I was freed from my nightly prison of sedation by Largactil, all they had at the time to try to get me through the nights and get me some sleep was to knock me out. This tiny little tablet changed everything. It made an absolutely unendurable experience bearable. It made the dreams of dying that my young head regularly engaged in stop. It made the chemo shrink to a defeatable life-sized monster from the Goliath-type uncontested winner it had been for all those months. So after more than 2 years of treatment and surgery, I was able to overcome this cancer to become a normal, if somewhat rambunctious teenager. I loved music and socialising, lost interest in school. I was convinced that I was invincible, like all teenagers, and I just knew that I was right every time, and that everyone else, my dad in particular, had no idea what life was really about. My friends became more important than my family, and I lost my way a bit. I spent time at the hospital when I should have been at school, visiting my friends who were still sick, visiting my friends, most of whom would die. While they were fighting for their lives, school just didn't seem that important. I moved out of home young, got a job and left school, deciding at each step to do things the hardest way. By the time I was in my early 20s, I realised that school was a good idea after all, and I returned to study. And it dawned on me that my dad was a great bloke and my strongest friend and ally. I started hanging out with my family again, went to uni and got my life back on track. I even met this nice guy, Mike, a big burly redhead who I really quite fancied. Meanwhile, my brother Sam was establishing himself as a promising young actor. He had worked on many ads and voiceovers before he started to land bit parts in dramas. Then he was thrust into the public eye with the screening of his first starring role as Evan in The Secret Life of Us. Fame at such a young age wasn't easy. Sam became distrustful of people, thinking that everybody wanted something from him. And he was right a lot of the time. He too drifted away from family, getting submerged in the lifestyle and working 18-hour days to build and maintain his career. Mike and I had been together for a while. He had proposed after just 3 months together, and we couldn't stop smiling. We were one of those couples that, while a bit cute and everything, you kind of think, oh, just get a room. I was happy going to uni, dating the guy of my dreams, hanging out with family, and working heaps to get on top of the debt I had amassed in the previous, less discerning years, when Mike got this twinkle in his eye. You can imagine our surprise when I discovered that I was pregnant, not only because I was told that I was infertile from when I was a child, but because I had dutifully taken medical advice and was on the pill anyway. So there we were, aged 23 and expecting a baby. I was afraid that Mike, being young and ambitious, would be less than impressed, but his first reaction was to say that we better trade in his sports car for a sensible family wagon. We were delighted and started lists of baby names, and the planning for the new arrival began immediately. Dad was overjoyed. He had always thought that I would be missing out by not being able to have children of my own. Sam and Hilda were thrilled that I would have the chance to be a mother and thought I would be a natural at it. But then something went wrong. I had some pain and bleeding and went straight to the hospital. First, I was told that I had a stomach bug. After all, the resident doctor had one at the time, and there was a lot going round. So naturally, she diagnosed me with gastro. When I returned 3 days later, I was told that I had miscarried. After the unexpected joy of discovering I was expecting, I was devastated. Mike and I went out with Dad, Hilda and Sam, and we all drowned our sorrows. But I woke up, hungover, yes, but certain that I was still pregnant. Blood tests confirmed that. Thankfully, everything was okay. It was a misdiagnosis. But upon my third visit to ED, an ultrasound finally revealed an irregular shaped sac, and there was no heartbeat. Not only did we lose our baby, but it turned out to be a tumour. It was a hydatidiform molar pregnancy. As you would know, there are two types of molar pregnancy, incomplete and complete. One's benign, one's malignant. The grief of losing our child was eased a little bit by the fact that it was incomplete and at least I didn't have cancer again. Wrong. After another misdiagnosis, it was revealed that the tumour was in fact complete and it was malignant. During my treatment, I was told by one doctor to get over it. It wasn't even a real baby, it was just a bunch of cells. After waiting for 3 hours for a clinic appointment one day, I informed reception that I couldn't wait any longer and that I had to get to my evening shift at work. Could we make another time? The doctor rang me that night while I was at work and told me that I wasn't taking my own health seriously, and clearly I didn't understand the gravity of this situation. At one stage, I was unable to make appointments at the clinic because my file had been closed and I was classified as in remission and my files had been archived. It was a comedy of errors, a series of humiliations that made me hate doctors. I hated them all. I hated nurses, I hated the admin staff, I hated hospitals. I seriously questioned if I could work within such a system, if I could work with these people who had treated me so badly. The only reason I persisted with my studies at that point was the rather vain idea that if I went into the system, I could help change things. Or at least I could be one of the good guys for the other poor patients. This molar pregnancy was a common problem, easily treated once diagnosed and no big deal medically. But when the cancer returned and I had to face more treatment, I was hesitant. I couldn't face the thought of more chemo. Despite this treatment being mild, I couldn't help but recall the 18 months of hell that I had endured as a child. I didn't want to go ahead with it. But I remembered the ondansetron and the staff persisted, telling me that the treatment had changed so much in the preceding decade. So I took the plunge and I agreed to go ahead with the treatment. Sorry. Fortunately, I was able to survive this cancer, even after it came back many months later. Did I survive because I was strong? No, I was a mess. Did I survive because I had a positive attitude? No, I couldn't find a silver lining in this to save myself. I was barely surviving the loss of our unborn child, let alone thinking inspiring, positive, healing thoughts. Did I survive because people prayed for me? No. I survived because there was effective medical treatment available. All I did was endure. 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 That, though, was the end of my biochem degree. I was numb, vacant, and struggling to get through each day, completely unable to focus on my future, our future. Study went out the window and I buried myself in work. Eventually the emotional pain numbed and Mike and I started to focus on other things. He finished uni and got a job with Defence and we moved to Canberra. We started our own online second-hand bookstore. We bought a church just outside of Canberra and renovated it and then got married in it before opening a bookshop in it. I was working in the disability sector, really enjoying my work. Mike was doing really well at Defence and we were building a successful business together that was even starting to earn a wage. Then, in our late 20s, Mike got that glint in his eye again, and within weeks, we were expecting again. This time the sac was a nice, perfect round shape, and there was a heartbeat. 7 months later, little Willoughby came along, and a year after that, he got himself a little brother, Hamilton. Life was great. We had 2 healthy little boys. We had each other. Our business was going great guns, and we had even saved a deposit for a house of our own. I had pain and lumps in my breast, which I went to the doctor about. I was told that I was too young to have breast cancer, that I had mastitis, which was easily fixed with antibiotics. I had niggling thoughts and kept going back to the doctors again and again. I went and saw 5 GPs at 3 different practices who all said the same thing. Don't worry about cancer, you're too young. It's mastitis, or it's capsulizing from the breast implants I had because I didn't develop much breast tissue because of my treatment as a child. I was content to believe these GPs because I was too happy. It was convenient. I didn't want to think that cancer could come into my life again. I was young, a busy mum of 2 toddlers, and I pushed those niggling thoughts to the side. I ignored it, and I was really happy to just accept their diagnoses. But then, on Willoughby's 4th birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Sorry, this is my last speech ever and I'm getting a bit emotional. I had survived cancer twice before, but this time it was different. This time, I was a mum. I wasn't a kid anymore with a dad to protect me. I wasn't an early 20s student with no responsibilities. I had to fight. I was willing to do anything to survive this, to stick around and see my kids grow up. Initially, I was treated to cure. I had a double mastectomy, chemo and radiation. It wasn't much fun, and losing my breasts was hard, and losing my hair again was harder than I anticipated. But I kept my eyes on the prize. I was determined to beat this. I had to, for my kids. Losing was not an option. At the end of my treatment, I was told that I was in remission and to come back in 6 months for a checkup. I asked for a scan to eliminate any doubt, to confirm that there was no cancer and no secondaries in my body. It wasn't common practice to do a full body scan at the end of treatment. Everything had gone well. It simply wasn't necessary. After much begging and pleading, I was granted the request form for a chest, abdo, pelvis CT, only because I'd had 2 previous malignancies. I had the scan to confirm that I was a cancer-free zone again, but the cancer had spread to my spine, lungs, liver, pelvis, ribs, knee, lymph nodes, shoulder. It was everywhere. I wasn't medically riddled yet, but this time I wouldn't survive. This time there was no cure. I was told that I would die. Mike would lose his wife. Sam and Hilda would lose their sister. Willoughby and Hamilton would lose their mum. The cancer was aggressive, and I was told that it was very unlikely that I would survive the average life expectancy for a young woman with advanced breast cancer, which is about 3 years. It was more likely that I had a few months to live, maybe 6. The advice was to quit work, get my affairs in order, and spend as much time as I could with my family. I would like you to stop at this stage and think about what that would look like for you. Not only that you could have only a couple of months left, but that you would spend most of that time feeling crappy, taking meds, resting, in and out of appointments, dealing with side effects, in pain. Around all of that, how would you fit in seeing all your friends and family before you die? What tasks would you prioritise? What would still be on your to-do list and your bucket list when you died? I actually really want to stop, and I want you to think what that would look like for you. I want each and every one of you to imagine that you have 2 months left to live. I don't know where your mind went then, what path it took, and what 2 months left to live would look like for you. But I know that anybody being told that they've got a few months left to live will always think that that's not enough time. So what do you do when you get told that you have less than a year to live? Well, you ring your brother, of course, and you invite him over for a drink. Or 10. And then, when he's sufficiently lubricated, you ask him to ride around the country for you on a unicycle. That night, in my kitchen, Love Your Sister was born. My little brother, Samuel Johnson, from The Secret Life of Us, Rush and Crackerjack, decided to put his life, his career and his family on hold to help with my legacy, to prevent other mums from having to say goodbye to their children because of breast cancer. We had 3 goals: to break the world record for the longest distance ever travelled on a unicycle, to raise $1 million for breast cancer research, and to remind every young mum in Australia to be breast aware. We even had a slogan: don't fall into the booby trap. I know, Sam's pretty proud of that one. After 2 years of planning, several failed sponsorship deals, hundreds of phone calls and thousands of emails, Sam set off on his unicycle adventure around Australia in February of 2013. After a year in the saddle, 80 school visits, 1,400 media calls, 300 community fundraisers, visiting the highest and lowest points and easternmost and westernmost points in the country, Sam had done it. He broke the record, having ridden 15,478 kilometres. We raised $1.2 million and we told everyone we met along the way to be breast aware. We told women face to face on social media and on the mainstream media that early detection is the best protection. As a result of the Love Your Sister campaign, thousands of women have checked their breasts and countless women have been diagnosed with early breast cancer and been treated and gone on to live their lives. But I had a 4th goal, a secret goal, to fix my brother. Vain, I know, to think that he needed fixing at all, or that if he did, that I could do anything about it. But nonetheless, fame and lifestyle had had its toll on him, and he had drifted from his family and the joy had slipped out of his life. He had lost his happy, and I wanted him to find it again. Here's a little snapshot of our project.
My name's Connie. I'm a 36-year-old mother of 2. I'm living with terminal breast cancer. When Sam asked what I wanted my legacy to be, my answer was literally, I want to prevent just one other person, one other family from having to go through this pain. He said, well, how are we going to do that? I said, well, you're going to have to hop on your unicycle, mate, but you're going to have to tell them one at a time, all around the country, to check their boobs. He said, well, I wasn't quite expecting that.
My name's Samuel Johnson. I'm unicycling around Australia, all the way, 15,000 kilometres in aid of breast cancer research.
Our goal is to remind every young mum in the land to be breast aware.
lucky if we raised a couple of $100 tonight. And we're at a couple of grand.
Thanks, Paul.
I can't tell you how close I was to cracking.
Darwin, yeah, we had a trip to hospital in Darwin.
Just scary. Not knowing, like I said, not knowing whether she was going to die or not in the back of that van.
So, of course, I didn't know what was going to happen coming into Perth. I wasn't meant to be seeing it, knowing that I was going to see it.
Seeing him with Connie kind of made it all worth it.
This doesn't end when I hop off the unicycle. This doesn't end when Connie dies. This ends when breast cancer is cured.
K's away from the highest point in the country.
Breast cancer isn't something that just happens when you hit 40.
I'm 29 years old and currently battling breast cancer.
I'm 37. I had breast cancer, but due to early detection, I've kicked its ass.
I promised my sister that I promised her I'd finish it.
The surprise on his face, and he did get taken aback, so that was awesome.
Gosh.
So, was that it? We had achieved our goals, and in the meantime, my cancer had stabilised, giving me a new prognosis. Now perhaps I might even make it to 4 years. Was it greedy to wish for 5? Now it's been nearly 6.5 years since I was told less than a year. And somewhere out on the road, Sam found his happy again. It was in the desert somewhere near the South Australian and Northern Territory border, and he's been carrying it with him ever since. No, for us, it couldn't end there. We still don't have a cure. Every year, over 15,000 women and 100 men are diagnosed with breast cancer. That's in Australia alone. 3,000 women and 25 men will die of breast cancer by the end of this year. Today, 8 mums will die. Since Sam finished the ride, we have written a book, recorded an audio book, run social campaigns, lobbied government, worked with Palliative Care Australia and Research Australia on policy. The Connie Johnson Fellowship in Breast Cancer Research has been established, and we had raised a further $3 million for research, bringing the total raised to over $4 million. Our new goal was $10 million. The only reason I am still here is because of research. With this cancer, I didn't have early detection on my side, so it all came down to the research. Shortly after I was diagnosed as metastatic, we found a drug that stabilised my cancer for many years unexpectedly. My survival thus far had nothing to do with positivity, with prayer or strength. It is solely attributable to the effective medicine being available. But it turns out that running a charity isn't easy, and we're by no means professionals at what we do. We're fumbling along and doing our best. And of course, it's such a cliche that you have to fundraise or start a foundation if you're diagnosed with something terrible. In an already crowded marketplace, we were competing for dollars to aid in medical research. So how could we attain our goal of $10 million for research when people are sick of their dinners being interrupted by phone calls for one good cause or another? When people are rightfully sick of chuggers attacking them on the streets, asking for subscriptions to charities? Struggling to maintain the figures we needed to stay viable, Sam begged me to raise some money. Pick an amount, he said. Make sure it's over 100K and find a way to raise it. Now I'm going to go into ad-lib here. Let's see how we go. So, I was listening to the budget in 2016 And they mentioned that they were going to phase out the 5-cent piece. And sorry about the pun, I know it's bad, but I literally heard a penny drop in my mind. And I thought, 5-cent pieces. That's the way we're going to get to the 10 mil. They're pesky. They're annoying. Nobody likes them. We all want to get rid of them. They don't go in parking meters. They don't go in the vending machine. You can't buy a Coke with them. So how could we get people to give them to us? How could we inspire them to actually dig them out and come and give them to us? Aha! A world record. Another one. This time it would be mine. Sam got his for his unicycle ride, but now, time for me. I was going to break the world record for the longest line of coins in the world, and my line was going to be in the shape of a big heart. I took to Sam my idea, and he said, "That's it. That's it. You can do it, Con." But we can't do it on our own. Go to Questacon. Go to everybody you need. Build a team. Do this and do it big. This was going to be a beauty, the feather in my cap. This was going to be the event of my career. And Sam had his world record, I'd get mine. And it made sense. Again, another bad pun. Asking for people for their pesky little 5-cent pieces to put together into a huge heart-shaped line to break the world record and cure cancer. So we started work last year, and in December, a scan revealed that the cancer was once again throwing a party in my body. My liver had started to agree with my ambition, and I had to decide whether I would be able to go ahead with this heart. I was told that realistically this time it would be 6 months. Would I make it to the heart? With my team of 15 committed volunteers in Canberra and 5 really committed people down here in Melbourne, the Questacon, the Mint and the Bendigo Bank, we were able to pull together the biggest heart this country has ever seen. On the 10th of May this year, we raised $2,535,680.25 with 5-cent pieces. Two weeks before the heart, I got a phone call to say that things weren't good and that I needed to start treatment straight away. Again, my ambition and my cancer disagreed, and I made the choice to hold off treatment until after the big heart. I had already decided that I would have no more chemo. My body was getting weaker and weaker, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the reserves, not physically, not emotionally, not financially. Chemo was over for me. But a scan just after the Big Heart Project. We had the Big Heart Project day, then we had a day of press and media, and then straight back into it, back at the hospital having scans. And those scans revealed that my liver was highly dysfunctional and close to failure. I had made it to the heart. We raised our 2.5 and I was looking forward to my retirement, some quiet time with my family. But just last week, I was discharged from hospital 2 days ago to come here with the plan of going home to die. Amongst many of the side effects and symptoms that I live with day to day, I have urinary incontinence as a result of the radiation treatment to my hips for the bony metastases. I now have fecal incontinence too. It's probably the same cause. But I find myself sitting in my own shit and then having to have other people clean me up because I can't do it myself. It's okay, I'm told. Doctors are used to seeing this sort of thing. Nurses see this stuff every day. They want to help. That's why they're there. But while you all want to help, and while you don't mind, I doubt if your desire to help and make me feel comfortable would stretch to a point where you are willing to shit yourself and ask me to clean it up so that we're on an even footing. Would you? Would any of you be able to bear yourselves in that way? Just so that we could understand each other? I don't expect you to, but I do expect you to think about it. My request for an SPC was denied when I was healthy enough because medically my dignity didn't matter. And now I'm too ill to withstand the surgery and my life will be so short that it won't be worth it. That choice is gone for me now. Each time you pull the curtain to examine a patient, I would like you to remember this moment. Picture yourself pulling the curtain for the patient's privacy. It doesn't matter that everybody can hear everything, it's just that they can't see it. But remember this moment and remind yourself that while it doesn't bother you, it's still perfectly normal for it to bother the patient. With each and every encounter you have the power to make it a positive one. Just by remembering that, like me, every patient has a person behind their illness. Every patient has a story behind their illness. Every patient is worried. Every patient is scared and vulnerable. It's inevitable when faced with ill health that indignity and vulnerability come to the surface. Whilst we continue to work to remind people of the importance of breast awareness and early detection, and we've branched out now raising money for all kinds of cancer research, not just specifically breast cancer research, that all cancers need to be fought, all cancers need to be killed. We do urge every woman here to check her breasts. We urge every man here to learn to talk to the women they love about checking their breasts. And guys, you can get involved. Save a life, grope your wife. I'll take the credit for that one. And whilst awareness and early detection are important, Sam and I are focused on reminding everyone of the importance of research. Me finally getting access to ondansetron as a child and for having it through my subsequent treatments has been life-changing and life-saving. I would not have gone back on chemo without it. The development of capecitabine has given me nearly 6 years of life that I didn't think I'd have. 6 years with my children. My children are now 9 and 10, and they've lived long enough. I've lived long enough for them to remember me when I'm gone. But ultimately, I will die, probably within the next couple of weeks, hopefully a month or two. And that's exactly why we need to continue the research. So mums like me don't have to say goodbye to their children. So families can stop being torn apart by the scourge that is cancer. As graduating students, you have the chance to contribute to medical science. You can consider a career in research. Or when you practice clinically, you can support research. You can combine the two You can use the expertise that you develop in the field, in the lab, so that you have less patients to see in the future. You'll all have to choose a specialty, and whilst practicing that specialty, you can stay abreast, of research in your field. You can find ways to participate in clinical trials and empower your patients to do the same. I don't know if you know this, but most research that's done for advanced cancer treatments is actually conducted on samples from early cancer patients. So we are testing medicines for a disease that has been morphed and changed genetically and spread throughout the whole body and almost become a different disease on the sample from when the patient first gets diagnosed. There's no clinical reason to remove metastases. Usually there'll be nothing gained by taking out a piece of tumour from the liver or a bony tumour. We don't want to distress patients further and make them go through unnecessary surgery and procedures in order to harvest the samples that we need for the research to be done on. But there are heaps of ways that we can harvest samples that will truly be helpful, that in the lab will give you a true indication of how that medicine will behave with that tumour in a body. So we have a massive shortage worldwide of samples of advanced cancers. I'm about to have a liver biopsy to see if my cancer's still behaving as it did many years ago. And while I do that, I'm choosing to have a second sample taken, which will be transported to Sydney within 3 hours and will be implanted into mice to develop a tumour bank of metastatic breast cancer. With very little extra strain on me, very little extra work for the doctors, and a very big opportunity to make change and make advances in medical science. We can proactively encourage patients to do that. If you teach yourselves about the research that's going on in your field and you keep up to date with it, you will be able to advise your patients of what trials are available. You'll be able to advise of when they can donate much needed tissue. When I first got diagnosed, I wanted to donate my body to a university, to the medical students. Ironically, they only accepted healthy bodies. I still don't get that. There's not that many healthy bodies that end up as corpses. But nonetheless, they didn't really want my body. They couldn't really use it. It wasn't a good sample of correct anatomy of the body as it should be. But since then, here in Melbourne and now in Sydney in a pilot program, there's been 2 warm autopsy programs developed. What happens is that when the patient dies, they're taken to the morgue, where they do a scan, a CT scan of the body, and they find all the active cells. This is all done within 24 hours of death. They find the active cells, the active cancers in the body, and they excise them. They transplant them into mice, and they develop bigger and bigger banks of usable tissue samples. I myself am devoted to this program. I live in Canberra, and there isn't one in Canberra, but White Lady Funerals has agreed to transport my body to Sydney within a few hours of my death so that I can participate in this. Because when we thought about it, we thought probably better that Mike doesn't pop me in the front seat, strap me in and take me for a last drive, because who knows what the police would do if they pulled us over. So with the help of scientists who are donating their time to this program, with funeral directors who are donating their resources, and with laboratories who are providing space, we are hoping to build a really large tissue bank of metastatic cancer tissues. So we've got the research side and we've got the patient side. Ultimately, the patient matters, and the patient is why all of this happens. It's why you guys study. It's why you guys graduate and choose your specialties. It's why the research is done. The patient is why that's done. We all do what we do to help people, and you guys are studying medicine so that you can help people. And improving patient quality of life and hospital experiences is all a part of that. For all of you, I wish you the best in your careers as health professionals. I ask you to keep research at the front of your mind while you assist patients clinically. And I'd like you to remind yourself of the patient dignity at all stages of their illness, however major or minor. And remember that you have the power to be a positive cog in the machine that is a hospital, to empower a patient who is vulnerable and scared. You are embarking on what will undoubtedly be a career full of challenges, full of change, full of advances and medically interesting experiences. Your workstation, though, is a patient's body. It's unlike other people's jobs. It's very personal. So as patients, we need to understand that you, as doctors, face difficult decisions every day of your working life, that you work mainly in the grey, that there's very little black and white in medicine. And as doctors, I urge you to understand that respect and dignity must come first. Thank you so much for investing your time into the medical field, for devoting your life to helping people through medicine. You're helping people like myself, and you've worked hard to qualify for a very difficult but undoubtedly rewarding career. For those of you who are graduating this year, well done, congratulations, and all the best out there. Thank you so much for having me.